Good Thursday morning, Trinidad, Tobago. Welcome to First Up right here on CTV. We are part of the Caribbean New Media Group, and we're proud to be state media of Trinidad, Tobago. It is Tuesday, June 6th. Let's make it 9 minutes after 6 o'clock. I'm Paul Richards. Two quick looks at news headlines. A really sad front page express story. Rihanna's torture, about the brutal murder of Rihanna Ali, who was found dead in her home, at her home yesterday. The 28-year-old Sipari woman has reportedly had a record of being burnt, beaten, or abused. Was the victim of domestic violence for many, many years, and unfortunately met her death at the hands reportedly of a relative. Investigations are continuing in that regard. Also, senior counsel to Ken Gordon, the chairman of the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission chairman, Ken Gordon, has the power to investigate the Emailgate scandal. This was made clear after the commission sought advice of a senior counsel on how the matter could be dealt with. The People's National Movement, which has been calling on the commission to investigate the complaint from the very start, immediately welcomed the move yesterday. The emails were made public by the opposition leader on the 20th of May. Dr. Raleigh has since also been sent to the Privileges Committee, and a man has been electrocuted on the THA work site. We'll have more on that later on, and of course the fallout continues related to the wrecking or the scrapping of a fire truck, and the prices, the exorbitant prices to say the least, which had been paid to have it moved after it had careened off the roadway. In our first segment this morning, we look at the possibility of the growth of the shipbuilding and repair industry in Trinidad and Tobago, with the announcement in recent times of the government in terms of diversification of our economy. There's an opportunity, according to professionals in the industry, for Trinidad and Tobago to make significant gains. Our guests include Mr.Wilfred Gannes, Chairman and CEO of Shipbuilding and Repair Development Company Limited of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Executive Chairman of Maritime Preservation Limited, a leading regional shipyard based at the Port of Spain, Mr. Michael Burke. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. We've been hearing a lot of talk about diversification of the economy. Mr. Gannes, we've had you on before about the possibilities, especially in the context of the Panama Canal expansion project due to be completed on April 15th, 2015, and the expected increase in the volume of cargo through the Caribbean region and also through the canal from the other side into the Caribbean to the coast of Africa and up to Europe. Let's talk about the position we find ourselves in presently. How would you describe the state of the shipping industry in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, Trinidad and Tobago is strategically well placed for the shipbuilding and repair sector, simply because we are beneath the hurricane belt. Presently, we're in the rainy season, which started on June the 1st. We also have quite a bit of skill sets that have been derived from our 100-year-plus history being involved in the energy sector. A number of skills that have been learned, for example, hydraulics, pneumatics, welding, the construction of petrochemical plants at the Point Lisas Industrial Estates. This was all undertaken by our nationals under the guidance of foreign counterparts. So therefore, the potential is great. Just recently, the Honorable Prime Minister, in concluding the visit of the President of the People's Republic of China, did mention about China possibly assisting our country with the shipbuilding and repair industry. I mention this because the People's Republic of China is the second largest shipbuilder in the world. So there's a lot we can learn, and luckily for our country, we have renewed our ties with a very large growing economy. And in November of this year, the Trinidadian government has indicated the opening of our embassy. So hopefully this will provide a closer linkage to China and helping us.
We've had conversations in the past year and a half or two about the possibilities regarding the growth of the shipping industry in Trinidad and Tobago. Have you seen definitive steps being taken to maximize or to realize some of these in the last 2 years?
Well, when we look at the shipping industry, we have to look at the infrastructure we have presently available and what plans we have in the near-term future. We have to bear in mind that the Panama Canal, the third lock, is going to be opened on April the 15th, 2015, which is just 2 years approximately from now. Unfortunately, in terms of the port development side of things, we are way behind the game. I think we have missed our boat as far as that is concerned. However, we still have to plan and at least try and get the approval process in place. So soon after the 2015 date, we can possibly have additional ports or expansions to existing ports that can cater for the larger ships, as well as the increased vessel traffic that's expected coming out of the third lock being commissioned in 2015 in Panama.
Mr. Burke, you're the Executive Chairman of Maritime Preservation Limited, a leading regional shipyard. What are the services your company presently delivers, and what are the possibilities from yourself as a businessman in the industry already for Trinidad Tobago and businessmen like yourself?
Maritime Preservation is the second largest ship repair company in Trinidad. It's established now for the last 19 years. We offer mostly to the commercial industry, vessels such as tugs and barges and small cargo vessels and some passenger ships, ship repair services such as steel work, blast and paint, prop renewal, rudders removed and that kind of thing. Just we have a dry dock and we do a lot of in-the-water repairs. In fact, just last year, over 50% of our services were provided to foreign ship owners that were visiting Trinidad on a temporary basis that needed some minor repairs. So that's a growing segment of our business.
How many locals would you say you've been able to employ in your 19-year history? And in terms of the skills development, how much have we gone the way of standardization with world trends and the technologies employed by shipbuilders around the world?
Right. Well, obviously the range of number of persons that would be employed would depend upon the volume of work, and it ranges anywhere from a high in the past of around 125 persons on a consistent, continuous basis for a period of a year or two, depending upon the project, down to about 35, 40 persons on a regular basis. And that's full-time persons. And then, of course, we use contractors as required to address the need depending upon the demand. Over the course of those last 19 years or so, there's been many individuals that have been working with Maritime Preservation that spun off their own business, if you will, especially over the last decade with the expansion of the repair industry in the yachting segment in Chaguaramas. So say former carpenters would spin off and otherwise have their own little businesses that they would expand.
In your 19 years, and especially in today's context, when you look forward to the possibilities with the third block of the Panama Canal being expected to be completed in April 2015, what are the major challenges you have faced?
Well, I would suggest that one of the areas that need to be addressed is the area of expertise. As was just mentioned a minute ago, Trinidad has a lot of advantages, and not just geographically because it's close to all the shipping lanes that transit from here to South America, but also, of course, with the infrastructure being available for the oil and gas industry with all the competent contractors that exist in this country. So that's one of the great things about doing ship repair work in Trinidad and otherwise offering potential, is that you can get just about anything you need here to address the needs of ship owners. I think that with the increase in volume of traffic that you would expect from the opening of the canal, and perhaps with the trade that's happening between Brazil and China, that you would see more traffic. And as I mentioned earlier, a growing segment of our repair industry is doing in-the-water type of repairs. So as you have more traffic, you would expect more vessels to stop by, if you will, to Trinidad, either to bunker and or to get these kind of repairs. So I see a lot of upside potential from not just the canal, but in general, as people become more aware of what Trinidad has to offer.
Mr. Gannes, you're the chairman and CEO of the Shipbuilding and Repair Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago. You're also participating in the Caribbean Growth Forum under the auspices of the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development, the World Bank and the IDB. There's a mandate for initiation of these projects from the World Bank and global bodies. We've been hearing a lot of talk about focus of this possible development of the maritime industries in Trinidad and Tobago. It has not trickled down to the general public in my estimation. What do you think is the major challenge you're facing at this point to get the systems in place? Because we had conversations with the Chambers of Commerce, the American and the Indian Chambers of Commerce in the past, talking about the potential as much as a year ago, with them saying not enough is being done to concretize or to consolidate a plan forward, and also starting to, as you say, get the necessary approvals to even move forward.
Well said, Paul. Just last month, our development company had the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Finance, together with the Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, and they were quite receptive. And coming out of that meeting, basically what was said to us is that in the last 2 national budgets, a lot have been said with the shipbuilding and repair industry. However, we want to see action now. And as I said just a couple days ago, the Honorable Prime Minister has indicated once again the need to diversify economy, and the maritime sector is one of the areas being targeted. The Caribbean Growth Forum offers an initiative for job creation as well as growth. And we have to look at growth in terms of diversifying from the energy sector.
But the word diversification means nothing, especially in any particular of the pillars identified by any administration, without vision, without plan, without timelines, without execution. Trinidad and Tobago is great at planning. We're great visionaries. We know where we want to be in 20 years. But we're pretty poor in implementation. And the early stages is where you really pick up steam or don't.
Correct. I agree with that statement. The Caribbean Growth Forum is being driven by the Ministry of Planning, which is the local host. Just today we have our very last session at the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business. The IADB is part of it, Inter-American Development Bank, UK Aid, as well as the other multinational lending agencies, including the World Bank. They have given the government of Trinidad and Tobago a 12-month implementation deadline for certain initiatives coming from the private sector. I am part of this growth forum, and quite naturally I'm pushing the shipbuilding and repair, which will also include not only increasing our dry docking capacity. We are looking at the implementation of smaller size dry docks, because we can only build this size within the 12-month period compared to a large dry dock compared to what is at Chagaramas at Carry Dock. We're also looking at developing the skill set training. Together, this was being undertaken, we hope, in the near-term future with the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training. They are looking to specially focus on our industry. So yes, a lot has been said in the past, but I honestly feel, with the Caribbean Growth Forum, things supposed to happen, and in their own words, the Trinidad and Tobago government would be held accountable if it doesn't work out.
One of the other points of concern from persons who have looked upon the possibilities in this industry is the fact that a lot of the talk about new ports being built. There was talk about expansion of a port in Point Lisas and other ports, and also the possibility of the starting of construction of a port on one of the other locations in Trinidad and Tobago. That would have given us a different kind of advantage, especially since we've known about the expansion of the Panama Canal for some time now. And none of this has started. When you talk to professionals in the field, the chambers of commerce, etc., and those who've been involved in the industry, like Mr. Burke, there is a kind of dissonance about action, definitive action starting to increase the global players' interest in Trinidad and Tobago, increasing their volume, coming down in spite of all our competitive advantages. We've not seen steps to expand the ports. We've not seen the sort of construction of new ports to increase the volume. They're talking about the possibility of bunkering services, the possibility of Trinidad and Tobago being a refueling center, because of our advantages, our natural advantages, which have not in any way been taken advantage of. Are you concerned, Mr. Burke, about the lack of actual definitive starting of many of these projects so that you can, in your own business, start projection, start possibly looking for investment to project growth in your own business?
Well, clearly it would be to the industry's advantage, or otherwise interest, to see the government come forward with some sort of articulate vision, initially what it is that we'd like to see happen within this industry, and of course following through with that with action that could take to otherwise assist the industry.
And incentives too.
And incentives.
So yes, it's a concern, but I think it's a work in progress, and there's positive indications that there's a real interest in putting together a plan, and I just have to have faith that that'll happen.
Faith is great, but some say we've missed the boat, because Jamaica has already done significant work in expanding their ports. also to many of the ports around Georgia, Louisiana, in the U.S., who have huge capacity and huge funding options, have already jump-started and have actually completion dates of this year and next year to start the testing process and the evaluation processes as to how their expansion is going to accommodate the increased volume expected through the canal. So we, being a smaller player, how much of a disadvantage does this put us at, Mr. Gannes? Because those countries are also touting competitive advantages. They're closer to the Panama Canal. They still are within the realm of possibility with the east-west trade and the volume of cargo ships going through the area.
It's much easier to expand an existing port rather than to build a completely new one from a blank page. It takes a lot of time and effort and resources as well to go through the planning implementation process. We have the EMA as one example that hurdle needs to be cleared for this sort of industrial development. As I said, my personal view is that we have missed the boat as far as you know, implementation, at least for that 2015 Panama Canal opening.
But how tough is it going to be to get into, and this is a question for both you gentlemen, when the trains already started to roll, when the boats have started to sail, when arrangements and possibly medium to long-term arrangements between existing ports, expanding ports up the chain in Jamaica, U.S. Gulf Coast, several U.S. Gulf, the port of Miami has also been significantly expanded to take advantage of these possibilities. And these ports and these jurisdictions are going to get into medium to long-term arrangements with the shipbuilders or the cargo companies around the world. How much of a does this push us back with trying to break into that at that late stage?
Well, presently the Ministry of Planning, Government of Trinidad and Tobago has put out a request for proposals for what we call a port rationalization study to see how best we can use our existing infrastructure and also to look at the opportunities for expansion. In terms of the energy sector, the Port of Galeota is to be commissioned. That's the new Port of Galeota is to be commissioned later this year, and already there's plans to expand it into a second phase. This is very important simply because with the increase in offshore oil and gas exploration, there's need for land-based maritime support, even with the ship repairs, you know. Presently, we have some 6 ocean-going drilling rigs offshore Trinidad and Tobago, and we have 2 workover rigs. You know, this information came out from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs. So a huge amount of maritime support is needed, whether it's new ports, whether it's new ship lifting capacity, because for example we have quite a bit of offshore supply vessel companies here in support of this deep water exploration. They need to be repaired and serviced here locally. Presently these ships have to go all the way back to the Gulf states of the United States of America just to get simple basic underwater hull repairs done. So we are looking within the 12-month period. We're working with the Ministry of Planning, also the Caribbean Growth Forum initiative, which, by the way, we are to present our findings in the Bahamas at the end of this month, the 25th and 26th. So hopefully, you know, I feel fairly confident that we're working on it.
We've been working on it and talking about it a while, Mr. Burke. As it stands, and coming off of what Mr. Gannes has indicated in terms of some of the larger vessels having to go further north to do simple repairs, do you think companies like yourselves and others have been given enough to bite on to look for investors or possibly yourselves expand your companies and your capacities to deal with these shortcomings in the local industry and possibly ready yourselves for any other volumes or increased volumes of passage through the area, just by Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, frankly, no. It's been a bit frustrating over the last number of years. I've personally been trying to engage the government in some sort of serious conversation about what their vision is for the ship repair industry, and frankly, it's really not borne any positive results. I think, though, that the industry has to take more initiative of its own. I think that frankly, that
But
there's...
doesn't the industry have to really be facilitated by the state when you're talking about the economy of scales that we're looking at here? And when Jamaica, the U.S. South Gulf coasts, and other larger jurisdictions that have already jumped the gun, as it were, in terms of preparation and infrastructural upgrades, at this stage, is talk really going to cut it for businessmen like yourself, or is more definitive action going to be needed for you yourself to feel comfortable enough to move forward in terms of expanding your capacity?
No, I think if the government is serious about diversifying the economy, and particularly with the ship repair industry, that they need to come forward and provide various incentives and/or the type of environment that would encourage private enterprise to expand. So I think that obviously there is a need for government to step up and to play a positive role. I just would like to participate with the government to try to articulate what that plan of action is. I've said many times in the past, if you just look at history, there's many fledgling small economies that were eventually able to become world powers, if you will, largely on the back of ship repair. Japan, for example, and Korea after that, and now Vietnam and Singapore and so on are good examples of how two or three decades ago they were just relatively minor players in the world economy, but today are large largely because of the foreign exchange that's generated from ship repair, as well as a large number of persons that are employed, both skilled and unskilled. So I think there's a really, again, wonderful upside opportunity if the government can just articulate a plan.
What size of industry are we looking at here? Several $1 billion. What level of contribution to the GDP do you think this can get to if we get our act together? Because obviously, from what we're seeing, our act is not as together as it should be.
Well, I would think a guesstimate would be close to 5% of our GDP. However,
as much as 5% of our GDP.
It will take time. For example, Singapore, just island, I understand, much smaller than Trinidad and Tobago, and they are situated off the international shipping lanes. Ships actually have to change course to go to Singapore. However, Singapore is a world leader in ship repairs. They have some 87 licensed shipyards, and the shipbuilding and ship repair industry contributes a far greater percentage of their GDP. And we have to look at countries similar to size of Trinidad and Tobago as example, and Singapore is a good country.
And don't reinvent the wheel, and see what they have been able to do in terms of their processes and their protocols to get things in train. Mr. Burke, in terms of the other players like yourself, how many other players do you think doing what you do have seen it fit to continue? And how much room is there in terms of growth for other players to come into the market to raise our capacity in Trinidad and Tobago?
There's, like I said earlier, we're the second largest. There's 4 shipyards in Trinidad. Of course, Carey Dock is the largest. We are full to capacity through to the end of September. To give you some indication as to the demand that is out there, as I said also earlier, that a large percentage of our business is from offshore, which I think still is in its infancy. I just feel that there's a tremendous amount of upside potential for other players to be able to come into the country, particularly if they had larger capacity. We oftentimes have to turn vessels away because we are too small to handle that size ship. 5,000 tons or so would be a great size shipyard for handling the majority of the type of traffic that we see here locally.
And finally, Mr. Gannes, in terms of the skills training that you talked about, and when young people or citizens in general look toward a career and going to an educational institution to decide upon a skill set to hone, they need to see some sort of opportunity down the road. Mr. Burke indicated he employs about 125, 150 generally up and down depending on the demand. Now, do you think the vision has been articulated clearly enough for the national level so that people see this as a viable career down the road? And as you said, we have a lot of transfer of skills from the energy sector, naturally, because there's similar skill sets that are required. But young people saying, well, that's because we're seeing a jump from 5 or 4 shipyards to 10, 15 with expanded capacity, that's a viable career. Are we there yet?
In the past, our company, development company, has participated in an annual Maritime mentorship program, which falls under the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investments. This program specifically targets our young adult population between the ages of 15 and 17 years. And the idea was just to get them interested and to learn more about the maritime sector, including the shipbuilding and ship repairs. The government has to direct some of the graduates, the younger generation, into specific industries. For example, China, every year they would make projections and say, hey, we have 20 million graduates coming out of university level or college level. We need to find a similar number of job positions, wherever it may be, agriculture, heavy industry.
And point them in those areas of specialization.
That's right. So studies have to be done. The CSO, Statistical Office, has to know how much graduates we have, and the government has to take that information and say, okay, we want to set up so many shipyards that will create so many thousands of employment.
Well, that has to be definitive data and not just guesswork and projections, because people are pegging their lives and their salaries. And this, gentlemen, thank you very much. And you're part of the Trade and Investment Convention coming up.
Yes, that's next week from the 12th to the 15th. We are having 2 booths, 93 and number 94. At the Hyatt Regency, Port of Spain.
Well, we will certainly be there from early in the morning next week, Wednesday. So we'll come look at your booths and hopefully give you a little plug or two.
Right.
You're most welcome, and the viewership as well.
All right, we've been talking to Wilfred Gannes and Michael Burke about the possibilities of the shipbuilding and repair industry in Trinidad and Tobago. Later on in the show, we can look forward to an update from the Sea Lot